Well, we've just heard an important message from Pastor Steve, and it's a message that really struck me to the core, thinking about what a name means, the significance of a name. Thank you, Steve, for teaching us today. That talk was incredible, and it had me on this really emotional, fun roller coaster, thinking about the names that I've wrestled with from my own kids, and going, okay, you know what? My first child will not be named, fill in the blank name. I'm not gonna say, because maybe you found Jesus or you didn't, and you're watching right now, right? You're like, that was me. No, but yeah, I was like, there's certain names where I was like, I refuse to call my child this name because what's associated with this name is like trauma or somebody who was mean when I was in like the first grade. You know what I mean?
So you hold on to resentment for quite a while.
Yeah, for a long time. And as soon as Rebecca would suggest a name, I'm like, nope, definitely not doing that. But there's so much in a name, And apparently yours is in gold.
Yes, that's how you say it.
which is what you want to be referred as for the rest of your...
I mean, it's just how you say it.
It's how you say it.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone, you've heard it, in gold. But they asked that question, like, who are you? In response to figuring out what your name actually was. And I thought about that, man. What an important question to see someone and ask, like, who are you? And I'm wondering, is that just a question that we don't ask enough, where we actually try to get to know a person for who they are?
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting if that was like a question in conversation. Because I think so often when you ask someone who are you, they'd respond by their situation or their job or something they're going through, like, this is what defines me. And so much of our identity ends up being tied to those things. And I think it would be really cool to get kind of a deep dive into, like, what makes you you. And like for me, I go to my name and what, like you're talking about the significance of that. I go to the things that I feel like God's gifted me with. Yeah. And my family, like the people around, like those are the things that define me. But I think that is an important question that we don't wrestle with enough.
Yeah. So. And then you laid out in that story with the woman who she knew walking into the room with Jesus that there were so many other things that defined who she was. But she saw something in Jesus. And she probably had that question when she first encountered, like, who are you? And whatever she discovered about Jesus was probably so, I don't know, it was like magnetic. I have to be in this room regardless of how much judgment I get from other people. So, like, what was it that she saw in Jesus when she asked the question, who are you, to Jesus? And what was it that Jesus saw in her?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. You just said, like, the things that defined her, that wasn't her choice to be defined by those things. It was all the people around her that defined her like that. And so I think, just to like take a step back from that, the bravery and courage it would take just to walk into that space, knowing that that's how she's defined in their eyes. But I think for her to go, this is why it's such a travesty that we don't know her name, because I would love to know more of her story. But for her to go, no, I'm valuable enough to talk to this person, to worship this person, to exemplify maybe the most intimate way of worship to Jesus in that culture, and for her to understand, I mean, it's a risky endeavor that she ventured into, but she pursued it because she saw something in Jesus, like you're asking, like she saw something in Jesus that was magnetic, but also kind and generous and gracious and just. Yeah. And those are the things where it's like, I think about the fruit of the Spirit, and I think those are things that you see, and we'll talk about this in our next series, but like, you don't have to ask an apple tree what kind of fruit tree it is, right? Because you see the fruit. You're like, oh, that's an apple tree. Like, that's probably should be true of us. Is people shouldn't have to ask, like, what we subscribe to or what we follow, because the fruit of the Spirit should be visible in how we live our lives. Yeah.
And she witnessed that from Jesus.
And I think that's what she saw in Jesus,
to the degree where it gave her enough boldness to stand in front of so many people, onlookers, who probably thought of her as nothing. Yeah. And then Jesus gave her that power, the intimacy, the legacy, and that even the identity was reshaped when she met Jesus. Right. And then all of this, like, that you were preaching about, like, it brings you to this place where we as a church see the need to see people in Chiapas, or the places in the world, through compassion, and ask the question, okay, who are you? Like, we want to show concern and care for you. What is it about this specific place that has your heart?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple layers to that. One is I think of like the same process that a lot of parents went through, like you talked about, to name their kids. And then the courage and bravery to say, like, we need help. Because you don't want to have to, like, say, my kid needs help because I can't provide all the essentials that this child needs. But that's the situation they find themselves in, and this is where we have an opportunity to come alongside. And I don't know, like the one that we sponsored is right around the same age as Jericho, my oldest, and we did that intentionally then, just like we wanted them to grow up together, essentially. And I think Chiapas specifically has captured my heart because it's so close. And just because I was born on this side of a line and they were born on that side of a line, our lives look a lot different.
Yeah, imaginary line at that.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think there's just an incredible opportunity for us to reach across that boundary and say, this is what it looks like to see you as Jesus sees you.
So good. Yeah, well, I'm grateful for this message, and the heart of this church is to do what we can with what we have. Any place that we experience advantage, like this is something that we step into. And it starts with the question, who are you? Having enough care and concern to be able to see people and not look away, but to actually see. And this is a community that we see. And so grateful that we get to partner and join in bringing help, providing resources to this community. So thank you so much for joining us, and that we love you so much.